Hey YouTube, this particular video is in response to a question that I got, because I mentioned in a few videos ago how water is my best element, but I didn't really explain how I got to that conclusion. So this video is about how to determine which is your best element. This ended up being a lot more difficult to explain than I really thought it was going to be, because the first answer that came to my mind was, you'll just know. Screw that answer. I hate that answer. It didn't work when I was trying to go to church, and it's not going to work now. I mean, magic is an intuitive process, don't get me wrong, but I think that there's always some way to get there from the other end of the spectrum. So, trying to look at it logically, I came up with a few ideas. First of all, try to actually really work with your elements just to start with, to get comfortable with them. Work with them in their natural state if you can. I mean, like sitting out in the wind and stuff like that. You know, and try to think of what kind of traits come from those elements that you can apply to people. In fact, one great exercise to do is to literally sit down and think of different people that you know and try to think of what element they are. Because sometimes it's easier to look at other people than it is to look at yourself. In fact, I pretty much guarantee it's usually easier to look at other people. But, for example, I know two people who are natural earth elements. They're not pagan, but they're earth elements whether they know it or not. My papa is a mason. He's been a mason for 50 years. He built my nanny in his house ages ago and made it of stone, and his house is his castle. He's a big homebody, except when he's camping. He loves to go out and camp in the mountains. And he's the one that taught me about caverns and took me to a lot of them and fostered my love of those. And he's also, on a more metaphorical scale, he's also very resistant to change. He doesn't handle it well. And like I said, he's a homebody. My sister is the same way. She's also an earth element. She's not a mason, obviously, but she's a rock hound. She's always collected rocks for some reason, and she, like I said before, she reminds me of a geode. She's all hard and crusty on the outside and beautiful on the inside. So if you really sit and apply it, you can start to see these kind of things in people. And everybody's made up of multiple elements. It's just that one will generally be very dominant. In my case, I'm a natural water element, and usually when I think of that, I think of my tendency to be over-emotional. I'm very powerfully emotional. I can go from freezing cold to scalding like that. And I'm one of those people that I always want to try and change myself and others for the better, but sometimes I have trouble easing that transition, keeping it down to a trickle. Sometimes I try to flood the gates, and that's not good. And I also have a tendency to bottle up my emotions, kind of like a dam, and when that dam bursts, it's pretty dramatic. So it's very important also when you're considering yourself and others that you be really, really honest. Don't just point out the good parts, point out the bad ones too. You know, as water, I am more than capable of affecting change, but I have to be able to balance it, because otherwise things get really ugly really fast. Another thing to do is to consider things that you like doing. I love water. I used to live on a farm, and we had this little valley, and whenever it would rain, I would I love to climb up on the hill, and not a big hill, like, it was flat land. I wasn't in danger of lightning strikes or anything, but this nice little swell of land, and I'd get up at the top of it and just enjoy the rain. I used to just absolutely adore it. I would sneak out at night to go skinny dipping in the stock pond. Surprised I haven't gotten sick from that. And I love swimming in general. I adore the buoyancy of the water. I can't really swim, but it's enough for me just to be in it. And like I said, when I get upset or agitated, the best thing for me to do is wash my hands, because that works wonders. It's things like that that can really make you realize just how in tune with an element that you are. Like, my sister, sometimes she's very hard to read, which additionally is kind of an earth element trait. But one thing I noticed is that as much as a neat freak as she is, she does not have a problem digging in dirt, like especially to get rocks or to garden. She really loves gardening, and her home is her fortress. She's very much my papa. It makes me think a lot of stone in the terms of the building sort of sense. That's what he did. That's what he is, really. My sister, she strikes me more as building more for defense. Not just home, but for defense. She has some very strong walls. And one of my biggest faults is that I don't really have those kind of walls. At best, I'm more like ice, and ice is very vulnerable, even at its best. Warm air, some actual heat to it, and it melts. Let's see. Let's touch on some other elements. If you're aligned with air, you might be flighty or have trouble settling. You know, you're always active mentally, physically, emotionally. When you're upset, you're probably more like a tornado. You're either just destroying or you're pushing everybody away so that you don't have to deal with them. You kind of shut yourself off from other people. You have a thing for, I don't know, kite flying or wind chimes, or secret obsession with skydiving. Air people also tend to be really creative because of that mental restlessness. You know, they're always going on to the next thing, but they might have trouble committing to the project. On the other hand, a fire element might be that closet pyromaniac that you worry about every 4th of July. Or maybe somebody who's very, very passionate about whatever, you know, to the point that sometimes they can get so passionate about something that they'll end up burning themselves or others, or perhaps even destroying the very product that they're working on. Or one of those quiet people that's like only quiet until you make them like burn, either with anger or desire or something like that. Or someone who's clingy, needy. We talked about neediness. Flame needs something to burn. Somebody with an addictive personality. And of course, being passionate is good. Being a zealot is not. Or, you know, allowing yourself to burn out too fast because you used up all your energy too quickly. And watch out for explosive tempers, smoldering grudges, jealousies. All those things are really big fire elemental traits. So I guess my biggest advice is to watch others, watch yourself. Really, if you need to, like, really write it out. You know, write out traits that you have, traits that other people have, and just be like, well, this reminds me more of the earth element, this reminds me more of the air element, and see what starts to dominate. I mean, I have plenty of other traits that belong to other elements. It's just that water dominates very strongly. And the thing is, it's not really necessary to know right away, and it can require a good amount of introspection and like some detailed self-analysis. So you really don't have to worry about it as much, you know. But it's good to ask those questions. You know, what do you love? What are you like? What makes you feel more comfortable? Like sitting there with a stone in your hand or watching a candle. I mean, what kind of, because I mean, like in all sorts of meditation you might literally be having to hold a stone in there and you'll be sitting there going, oh god, this is stupid. Or you may just be like, I'm here, the rock, I'm zoned into the rock. Like you'll be surprised with how things can be easier or harder depending on your alignments. But the important thing is that eventually you're going to be able to handle them all. Some just take more practice than others. I mean, I could sit and meditate on water all day, but air is a little more difficult, or fire, or you know what I mean. But once you've gotten comfortable with the elements, I think it'll probably be pretty self-evident to you. Even if you have to sit down and start with the logical end of it, you'll eventually come to the intuitive conclusion. The both of them will come together, and you will understand which is your best element. And once you know your best element, you can work on A, building that strength, and B, working on weeding out the negative qualities of that element and trying to replace them with positive qualities of the other elements, and kind of create sort of a balance of them. All right, good luck with that. Blessed be.